All right. Well, here we are again. And in honor of this LIV thing, this is show 32, everybody. And we have a special guest tonight, Chad Patton, joining us tonight. I've known Chad for, 20 years. I worked for my dad at Phoenix Country Club for 4 years. He caddied on the PGA Tour for a little while. There's better finishes on the PGA Tour than I had, of course. But that's what it is. Chad, welcome to the program, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And before we get into what I want to talk to you about, Dahlby, how was your trip today from Phoenix to Beantown for the U.S. Open? Kind of tell us a little bit how travel went.
So the travel started at 4 a.m. The 4 a.m. wake up call got to Terminal 3, Delta to Atlanta. Everything was going good. Plane delayed in Atlanta, so I got here a little bit late. My plan was to go out to the country club and get my credentials and parking stuff. And Troy actually got in early. Troy Merritt, who's playing in the U.S. Open this week. So he got there early, texted me. He's like, traffic is terrible. If you're delayed, you're not going to make it. I think they closed at like 6 o'clock. So he actually picked up my stuff. We've got a late morning practice and then 9 holes tomorrow, and then an early practice and 9 holes on Wednesday. So it was okay. It is very, very busy here. Traveling to the East Coast to these older airports is always kind of interesting. So that was my day, but I did want to congratulate a guy named Tim Kirk. And Tim Kirk is part of a group out of Iowa who own a horse named Mo Donegal. And that Bernie, when we went to the Kentucky Derby, that was with my brother-in-law. He knows the Kirk family very well. And so it was fun to see Mo have a good trip and win the third leg of the Triple Crown. He had trouble in the Kentucky Derby because he had a bad post and kind of got bumped coming out of the thing, but he ran a great race on Saturday. So congratulations to that syndicate. And that is there's like 70 owners and lots of money in horse racing. Probably not as much money as we're going to be talking about tonight, though.
Yeah. So Chad, so you've caddied out there. You've become friends with a lot of people on the PGA Tour, and some people that have defected to the LIV, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. Talk about what your thoughts are, what you know about the LIV, because I watched yesterday on the PGA Tour on CBS, and I listened to the Jay Monahan prepared speech, whatever you want to call it, the awkward handshake. I listened to Phil this morning. I listened to Justin Thomas. Talk to me about what you know. And the LIV is for real. We get it. We understand it now. But talk about where you think this is going and some of your thoughts about what you know already.
Well, I mean, I'll start with this because I think this is probably the more pertinent question here. Is like, I think you have I'm a traditionalist, as I know you are, and I worked for your dad, he is as well, and then you have your nonconformists. So I think that's the pure divide with the PGA Tour and the LIV Tour and the LIV Tour. So, but what this boils down to, and what you're seeing in the market, is the economics come into play. I mean, the money is just too good to pass up for a lot of these guys, and it's not a knock on the PGA Tour. It's just a disruptor of sorts. And I think that's where you're having these guys that are coming into, legacy changing. It's literally life-changing money, upfront money that we've never seen. It's literally like signing bonus money for players. And no one's ever seen this. And they literally have a limitless checkbook, an unlimited fund to finance their players. And I think this is only the beginning, to be quite honest. I think that shots have been fired on both sides of the bow, and I think that's what you're going to continue to see. And there's going to be sides taken. I think you saw that today with Golf Channel and some of their panel, and the interview with Phil. And he had to remain coy for a reason. I think he's going to be guarded with a lot of his questions, and I think that's probably in his best interest right now to be what's transpired and what's happened. And I understand from a traditionalist standpoint with the LIV Tour where the money comes from. But I think as a player and an independent contractor, if you will, like these players don't have these guaranteed contracts that other sports offer. Yes, they do have a phenomenal pension fund with the Charles Schwab it's the best pension fund of all in all the sport. But I believe like this type of money is just money that, and money's talking right now. We're seeing that. I just think it's something that these players just can no longer turn their nose up with. And you saw a lot of this same thing happen, the same disruptor, if you will, happened in the early 90s with the European Tour and the PGA Tour. It was very similar. You had European Tour players at that particular time. The money and the purses started to grow exponentially. You had Tiger Woods coming on the scene, and his impact was known from the get-go. And I think, you know, those guys had to come across the pond for the purses. So it was no different. Yes, is the money generated from other resources? Yes. Sponsorships and whatnot. This is completely different. But I think that's more the divide that you're seeing and hearing, especially across the media channels right now. That was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You can go on with Dahlby and I'll just sit here and listen to you. But so when you're a kid growing up, okay, and you're, let's say, decent at golf, halfway decent or whatever, or maybe, you know, a little bit better. Every kid, and I'm going to bring women into this equation as well, their dream is to be on the PGA Tour or the LPGA Tour. And that was my dream until I realized the dream couldn't be reached. And for all these players that made it to the PGA Tour, it's not like they when you make it to the PGA Tour, you're making a good living. Some people make more money than others. I get it. Some people are better than others. I get it. But it was always a dream to make it to the PGA Tour. And now some of the players that have defected, and I'm going to use that word, defected, to the LIV, who've given up their tour status, now have, and I guess it hurts. Because you talked about it, you brought it up at the beginning of the show, a traditionalist. And I get money. Money's important to be able to survive. And a lot of these players have lifestyles that, you know, us don't have, and it's more expensive. But to give up what you wanted as a kid and just throw it away for money, I mean, I guess that's what it's all about. And I mean, some of these guys don't need all that money. I mean, I guess an Andy Ogletree, maybe, I don't know, but maybe the guy that finished second this week, who I can't even pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try. Maybe he needs it, and it was a life-changing moment for that guy. But for some of these guys like DJ, Phil, Bryson, Reed, even Kevin Na, I mean, it's mind-boggling to me, Chad.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I think that's probably the hardest thing to decipher from is my traditional mindset. But I understand it. I mean, I think if you're looking at it from if you have your family, I mean, think about if you're in your mid 40s, you've had your time on tour. Kevin Na is a perfect example. I don't know what Kevin Na's tour earnings are. I'm guessing 50, 60 million. Maybe more, I don't know, and what he would have in his pension working for him and what's contributed on a monthly basis from the cuts he makes and whatnot. So yes, you have that. I think this is kind of that parachute money that we all dream about and talk about, to be quite honest. So you have that upfront money that people are getting from join the tour. You have your pension that's going to continue to work from you. Yes, it's not going to be contributable anymore, but it's still working for you. You're still compounding interest every 7 years. So I think those are things that they probably took into account. And then there's other things. I mean, I think people are missing out on. There was 43 tournaments this year on the PGA Tour. That's not sustainable. There's 52 weeks in a year. And as a PGA Tour member, PGA Tour member, you're only required to play 15 tournaments per year. So I think these people, I think, you know, a couple of the guys that are older are looking at it like, hey, I'm only playing 7 events this year, and it sounds like there's going to be 14 events next year. There's going to be some downtime. There's going to be family time. There's going to be time, idle time that they didn't have prior to being the grind, if you will, of the PGA Tour. And it's a jockeying position out there. And I think that's probably taken into account and probably missed more in the big picture than probably even, you know, just your average Joe just watching golf and cheering on their favorite golfer. I understand that, but I think that's what a lot of the guys behind it, those were a lot of the decisions being made. You know, you sit down with your wife and you have young kids and you're gone that many weeks. I mean, I have friends out there that play. I mean, it's hard. You're grinding 6 days a week. You're out there. I mean, it is. I mean, Steve, you know it. I mean, it's one of those situations that it's a full-time job, and they have a phenomenal career. But you're a bona fide gypsy. You're almost a carny. It's just you plan it down in a different city every week, and the grind continues. So there's really no let up. I think this gives them that opportunity, not only have some parachute money up front, but it gives them opportunity to have a little more idle time with their family. It sets them up for the future where there's not so much pressure internally and externally that they have to deal with as well. So I think that was a lot of the decisions being made with some of the players, in my opinion.
And Chad, I agree with that. I think that that you make a good point when you talk about the 40-something player. We're hearing that Pat Perez is probably going to be moving over. Dustin Johnson apparently helped him get a deal, and for Pat, that kind of from an economic standpoint makes a lot of sense. I think they just had baby number 2, so your points about family, you know, that does make sense. What really bothered me today, and I'm all about anybody can make their choice. It's their choice and they can do what they want. What bothered me today, and I don't know if Bryson said this today, I saw something with DeChambeau where, you know, he was talking about it and he said, well, you know, this is entertainment, and I'm going to entertain whether it's here or there. I'm an entertainer. And I just, for a 20-something-year-old who is trying to do things differently in the game, I would think for Bryson DeChambeau, he would be more of the mindset now, at least, that, hey, I'm playing golf, playing against history, as opposed to chasing dollars at this point. And I know in his mind, he thinks this might be something that's going to change the game. But that one today, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? When he's saying he's an entertainer, he plays golf. Go win golf tournaments. You're 20 some years old. That one I had a problem with.
Yeah, I see both sides. I really do. I can see both sides of it. That's a great argument. That's fair. I think a lot of these responses that you're seeing from these guys, though, right now are canned. I don't think they're able. I think they're literally like, there's almost like a muzzle on them of what they can and can't say, just because they're going to be crucified regardless of the decision. The traditionalists are going to have their way. And then the nonconformists, you know, I can see both sides. So I'd probably sit on the fence and idle on the fence more than any. I see it both sides. You know, my biggest surprise wasn't like DJ or any of that. Like, my surprise was kind of like Gooch. Taylor Gooch. Like, Gooch was a big surprise. Sitting 10th in the FedEx, and you know, that number had to be big. To make that move had to be big. And I think, you know, I would like to know a little bit more what went behind that decision. And eventually these stories will come out, and obviously the interviews will happen, but I think we're still in the embryonic stages of kind of this whole idea and this disruptor of what the LIV Tour is and what it's going to be. Because I do think in the future, there is a way for them to coexist. If you only have to play 15 events on the PGA Tour as a PGA Tour member, and there's only 15 events or 14 events in the LIV, there's room for both. Who's going to allow that? That's probably going to be decided in the court.
You bring up the court, and you make you make a good point about these answers on interviews may be very thought out. And I don't want you to name names of people that you know or are in touch with, but are lawyers involved already? Are players talking to their lawyers to get advice, you know, on how to handle things that they may see coming up in the future?
I'm sure that those conversations have been back channeled for sure. I think anytime you're about to sign a contract, whether it's a 2-year, 4-year contract with upfront money, your agents are going to have conversations with attorney and counsel. I mean, I think that's just good business tactic, right? I think if you go about it without counsel or repercussions or sanctions of what could be levied, I think that would be irresponsible on the player's behalf and the agent's behalf. I know that I know the LIV Tour, and you guys know this as well. It's common knowledge now that we know it's out in the media, but I mean, I know that they have their counsel ready to fire. And I know that no one, you know, they said when this all started, the only people that are going to get really rich are the attorneys, and they're probably right. Because what will eventually happen in order for some of this to maybe calm down a little bit too, is you're going to have players that they're going to have to go to other resources, applications for Asian Tour, European Tour for their official World Golf Ranking points. That's what's going to happen. They're not going to be able to garner those at the LIV Tour. So they're going to have to figure out ways and back channel ways to accumulate their own points. And that's the way they're only going to be able to get in the majors and whatnot. But, you know, depending on who you talk to, and, you know, you might get 3 different answers from 2 different people. So right now, I think there's just still a little, you know, we're lacking a lot of clarity around everything and everyone's personal decisions. But I think that eventually there will be a way for them to coexist. And that's my opinion, because I think there's too much money at stake right now. And the PGA Tour is going to start hemorrhaging players. And that's a problem. And they can talk about all they want about trying to replace certain players, but it's hard to replace some of the firepower that's leaving, in my opinion. I mean, you have people that are truly needle movers in names, and that's just my take on it.
Are more people leaving? How many more have you heard that are leaving?
I've heard there's going to be a lot more.
Like 20, 30?
I've heard it's lower than that, but there's going to be a lot more. That's what I've heard.
Dahlby, and I've never asked you this question before, and not even like in our personal talks and stuff like that. I know I have to figure that if Andy Ogletree or Puig from Arizona State are playing on the LIV Tour, I know that Troy, top 100 player in the world, had to be offered something to go play. Can you say anything about that, or do you know anything about that?
I think there was a conversation with agent, LIV Tour, and then there was a very quick I'm going to stay on the PGA Tour for a number of reasons. You know, we've talked about this before. Troy is a little different breed where he really does. He wants to compete against the best players in the world. He feels that's on the PGA Tour. He worries about the I think how long this tour could last or what could happen. And in his position, and it's a position that a lot of guys might have, is if let's say you go play, any player goes and plays, and they maybe don't have great status, even though you might be a top 100 player, maybe you haven't won on the PGA Tour in the last couple years. So now the LIV Tour folds. What happens then? You know, you've been suspended. Even if you are allowed to play, are you now playing out of past champions, or do you have to go back and requalify because you aren't on? You know, you're not 125 on the FedEx list. You know, after a couple of years, if you don't play, you're not going to be on the Fed. You're not allowed to be on the FedEx list. So those are concerns, I think, for some of the players. And again, I think what Chad says about that sort of 40-something-year-old player that can you know really change a lot financially, probably to me makes more sense than a 20 or a 30-year-old player. But that's just kind of what I've kind of gathered from that situation.
So Chad, let's talk about this for a second. There's 48 players that play each and every week on the LIV Tour. If they're inviting 17 or 20 or 25 or whatever the number might be to join the LIV Tour, the players that have already signed agreements, paid up front, whatever it might be, can possibly be not playing and kicked off that tour because bigger names are now taking over for other players. And I'll use an example. So what hypothetically, if they bring whatever, 15, 20 players over there and Kevin Na doesn't perform and he gets kicked off, what the hell does he got left?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something that is certainly will be addressed here soon in the media. But as I understand it, I mean, he'll be out of a job. I mean, he'll have to, go to the resources we spoke about earlier with like European or Asian tour. And I think he'll have to look at other options. Now, would that happen? I mean, I think they're going to be what's happening now is I think you're seeing some of the captains are doing a little bit of recruiting. You're seeing the team format kind of take its own structure and its own course of the matters here. So that's something that's going to be pretty interesting as we move forward, because every captain is going to try to stack their team. Don't forget about that. This team aspect in the Tour Championship is huge. I mean, the first place team gets 16 million, 4 million a player in the Tour Championship. So these captains are going to go about their business and recruit the best players they can.
Okay, so you talk about the teams, and I know they had this draft that was whatever.
Yeah.
But there were teams that were already set, like
Yep.
the team of Oosthuizen, Schwartzel, Grace, and the guy's name that I can't pronounce that finished second. That was a team that was already set in stone. So
Yeah.
is the recruiting. So when you talk about recruiting, and Dahlby brought it up earlier about DJ going to get Pat Perez, does Pat Perez automatically go on Dustin Johnson's team?
Yes, he is. He's going to go on Dustin's team. Yeah. But every deal is going to be, from my understanding, not every deal is like this upfront money. Not every deal. This could be more incentive based for certain players. But there will be a pecking order. Make no mistake about that, because there's only 48 players in the field. So there will be people fall by the wayside, like some of the guys that got the start, sponsors, exemptions, whatever they were. I mean, you're going to see some of those guys go by the wayside, unfortunately, and they're going to have to make amends with other tours and whatnot. So yeah, and then we're going to see how these sanctions hold up. We're going to see if those hold water and those hold merit, and that's where you're going to start to really see, can players have, and then you could have this jostling. You could have this jostling position eventually, maybe for the LIV Tour. Like guys might be really trying to make a name for themselves on that tour, while they continue to play on the PGA Tour. I'm being assumptive here, but I think there is a future. Like I said, I really do. But until we kind of figure out, until there's more clarity involved around the situation, you are going to have, to your initial point in your question, you're going to have players bumped. There's no two ways about it, because they're going to want to bring on names. That's the reality of it.
Okay, so Monahan came out yesterday in that whatever interview with Nance, and said everybody's suspended. Now, I'm sure that he's had talks with the DP Tour, maybe even the Asian Tour. If the DP Tour agrees with Monahan and says, no, you guys can't join, or the Asian Tour says, no, you can't join, what now? I mean, yeah, you've got the money, you've got the $120 million or the $200 million that Mickelson got, or whatever it might have been. Somewhere, you hear different numbers every single day. But now you're only allowed to play, as you said, 7 or 8 tournaments this year, 14 next year. The Masters, even though you've won the Masters, and even though Phil came out today and he made that bold statement of, I'm a PGA Tour member for life because of everything he's done. It doesn't mean that he can just show up and play. Augusta, even though you've won Augusta, they can tell you to go kick rocks, dude.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's really that's where there's going to be so much more. And I think in the weeks ahead, and obviously we get to some of the majors come, and there's going to be more that's going to fall out here. There's going to be, because I don't think you can just kick these players to the curb either. Like, they're going to have avenues to go play. Sanctions, they're going to file appeals. I mean, they're going to do all of that. Make no mistake about it. Yeah, I think Phil had, let's not mistake ourselves. Phil has probably more knowledge than anyone on tour and the internal workings of what the PGA Tour how they operate, what's distributed to the players. And I feel like that will eventually probably come to light. And I think as a PGA being a nonprofit, the last thing that they want to do, last thing I'd want to do if I'm a nonprofit, is go to court and open up my books for everyone to see. And that's another thing that's probably scaring, in my opinion, the PGA Tour a little bit. Like, you have this LIV Tour, which is unlimited financial wherewithal to take you to court, and all the attorneys get rich, but all of a sudden someone's books are getting opened. And then we're going to really see, I heard that, I think that the tour was in 2022, they were projected to make like 1.52 billion in revenue, and 858 million was to be distributed to the players. So there's a 650 million there somewhere in my math, like 600 million, right? So it's like, those are the things that a lot of people probably don't talk about or speak to, and that's where this, the money comes back into play. And that's where people just need to understand, like, there's growing the game. And I think the game's in a phenomenal place, but hey, behind the curtain, there's a business here, and there's real money at stake. And that's what people, I hate to say it, but that's just the reality of the world that we live in right now.
Well, and Chad, I think that's where, Phil obviously took a break. And I think some of this break that he took was, I think it was a bit manufactured, but I think, he probably, to your point, when he started talking about some of the inner workings of the tour, he might have jumped the gun a little bit on that in terms of his persona. Maybe shouldn't have said some of the things he did. You see him, a very different Phil Mickelson today. Even just the unclean shaven look, speaking, I think, in a little different tone, and talking over the last, couple of weeks about healing and this and that. But so I do think, he might have got ahead of himself. Now he's trying to reel it back a little bit. The thing I thought about is, and the figures that you talk about with the PGA Tour, that sounds absolutely correct. The PGA Tour, I believe, acts as a nonprofit entity. And the thing that I think about is, through all this litigation that could come up, is that going to be something that possibly has to change a little bit from a tax standpoint? I know the PGA Tour, does do a lot, maybe more than some of the other sports with regards to charity. I don't know if that, the missing money you're talking about is all charity, or if it's Jay Monahan's private jets. That is a question that I think, we will find.
Sure. No, that's very valid point. I think, and that's probably ultimately what nobody wants to see. I mean, let's be real. I think the PGA Tour is a very, very conservative, traditional, nonprofit, if you will. So I'm sure they don't want to open up their books they don't want to open the books for the world to see. That's not going to be good business for anyone.
Right.
So what we saw this week in Canada, and normally we would preview the U.S. Open and talk about the U.S. Open. I'm surprised you're drinking caffeine, by the way. I'll be so late in Boston. What we saw this weekend in Canada with Rory, with Justin Thomas, with Tony Finau, absolutely blew away anything that I watched this week. And I watched a little bit of the LIV. I didn't watch a lot, but Rory saying that this was extra special for him because it was 21 and he passed Norman, which I thought was one of the coolest digs on live TV that I've seen in a long time. And then, Justin Thomas, the way he spoke about how much he cared about, because he comes from a PGA Tour, a PGA professional, like I do. And Chad, you used to be in the business. You were a pro for a while. So you get all that. And then Finau, the ramifications of these players going to the LIV and not being able to play for their country, because the Ryder Cup's a big deal. The President Cup's a big deal. These people aren't eligible now to play in any of this stuff that went over there. Now, Kevin Na, Louis Oosthuizen was a big name for me that I was surprised it went over there. But Schwartzel and those guys, they're in their late 40s, Garcia and things like that. but they're not going to be. I mean, Dustin Johnson gave away any chance, in my opinion, of ever being a Ryder Cup captain. Phil, the same way. Everybody thought, oh, in 2 years, Phil's going to be the captain, when it goes back to New York. There's no way that's going to happen anymore. I get the money factor. I totally understand that. And as we've talked about in this show, I mean, you said it, Chad, pension points, you get $4,000 for making a cut on the PGA Tour. The tour matches it. As you said, every 7 years, it gets, more interest involved. So a player like Pat Perez, who came out in his interview the other day and said, I've made 329 cuts. You can figure that out. 329 times 8 is, 2.5 million. In the 20 years he's been out there, it's probably worth 5 or 6 million. So they have the money. I'm going to use the word greed because that's how I feel. I'm a traditionalist. I love the PGA Tour. It's going to be very hard for me to watch the LIV Tour. It just is.
Those are all fair points. I mean, no one would argue with those points, especially as a traditionalist. And I understand it. Like to your point, I worked at a private country club. I get it. I think when you look at it though, from I'll go back to the financial aspect because that's ultimately what drives the decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, you're looking at all expenses paid. They literally don't pay for anything. All caddies' expenses are paid. Do you think caddies want to sign up for that? Play 54 holes, not 72 holes? I mean, all the expenses are paid. I think the LIV, one of the guys in charge that paid the caddy, the winning caddy, his fee. I mean,
true.
The player didn't even have to play. I mean, so there are things that are going to be so out of the box that we're not even used to. It's unthinkable to see this kind of money in the game of golf. And that's what's really thrown us all for a curveball. It's like, how could he has the audacity. Well, if I'm dangling a carrot of $100 million in front of your nose, you might have the audacity as well. And then not to say like the team aspect of where these sponsorships are going to come into play eventually. And there's going to be team captains and ownership involved like Formula One. That's going to be a whole nother revenue stream for these players. So we're talking legacy, compounding legacy money in play here. And I don't think the bucket of the Saudis is going to go dry anytime soon. Let's be real. So, but from a traditional standpoint, I see both sides of it. Is it sports washing? That's a new term I learned this week from Brandel. I don't know. But I do know this. I mean, if you look at Saudis, I mean, they own 40% of American Express. I think they're an investor in Citibank. I mean, BlackRock. I mean, you look around, like Rich Lerner said, they invest in a lot of American companies. So it's a little like hypocritical in some ways when you're talking about what a player can and can't do when we're over here doing it as a consumer and for geopolitical aspects. So that's where it gets a little sticky, in my opinion, of where you're having this finger pointing contest from across the fence about you have the audacity. Well, hang on, let's back it up. Look at our corporate sponsorships. Where's some of that money? Like, where's that money being generated from? And plus, we're playing golf tournaments over there already. We're playing golf tournaments in China. We're playing golf tournaments in Saudi Arabia. So there's arguments to be made for both sides. I get it, but at the end of the day, like I said, like as much as people want to put the fog glasses on, this is still a business and people are going to make the decisions based on what's in their best interests. And I think when you have this families involved, there's a lot of pressure there as well. You don't think a wife is in someone's ear talking about, wow, that sounds pretty good to me, honey. 125 million for 4 years, I'll take it. I mean, and by the way, you don't pay for anything. Like, it's hard to turn away. And by the way, your purses are doubled, $20 million purses, $50 million purses for a tour championship, and you play half the tournaments. Wear and tear on your body, like the list goes on. But I understand the list on the other side too. I'm just playing devil's advocate from a player standpoint from the LIV Tour, because I feel like you're probably only seeing one side of the argument from the Golf Channel and whatnot. And I get that the talking heads are going to protect their tour, as they should. There's certain aspects of the tour that I think should be protected too. And those players, the PGA Tour is going to go on. it'll never go away. The PGA Tour does incredible things for incredible people, and for the experience of the PGA Tour is, to your point, it's everyone's dream. No one dreams of the LIV Tour, but is that going to change in 20 years? If the LIV Tour's around? I don't know. Are they going to be two separate entities for the rest of, the lineage? I don't know. Those are questions that'll all be defined by history here soon. And I just still think that there will be a way, once the egos settle down, I think there will be a way that there will be coexisting tours.
And
So
that's where
go ahead, Dahlby.
A guy like Bryson, and he does think, he thinks out of the box, but he's thinking all the time. He has to still, I would think, even regardless of comments today, which I thought were dumb, but
Yep.
There's got to be a strategy in his mind to keep world ranking points, to play in majors, to try to get in, world golf championships, if that's allowed somehow down the road. There has to be strategies. And I'm sure there's a bunch of, I'm sure Greg Norman's sell is that, that you can play in the majors, you can do this, you can do that. We can do something with the Asian Tour to get your world ranking points. I think that's something. But then, Bernie, to your point, where you're dropping people, Greg Norman's vision of the World Golf Tour years ago was basically a handful of guys, him included, because at the time he was one of the world's best players, playing for tons of money, and the rest of the people, kind of be damned. So it will be, there is that side of things too, where I think that Greg is looking out in his mind to develop something that is, I'm going to bring all the greatest players, but then what happens to these other guys? What happens to number 45 or 46 or 47 as they drop out? So there are a lot of unknowns. Bernie, how was the coverage? I didn't watch it. So how was the coverage? I don't even know how you get it.
You had to go to YouTube. It was all right. Jerry Foltz, I've known him forever. He was the lead guy. It was good. I wouldn't say it was great. A lot of people said it was better than they thought, and I'll give him that. But I guess, Chad, to go on to your point here, are you sure this is not a one and done deal? Or is this, if we're having the same conversation in 4 years from now, I've got more gray hair, Dahlby probably has more gray hair. Are we talking about the LIV? Is it survived? Because if you look at it, they have no sponsorship. They're not making it. They're not making a nickel, and they're spending gazillions of dollars each and every week. I get that they have unlimited resources. I understand that, but can it survive? Because eventually, in my opinion, you're going to have Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, or whatever the next future of golf is for this to survive. Because I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning to watch the final round of the LIV to look at Charles Schwartzel, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, maybe a Taylor Gooch, and guys like that. I just don't see it. So do they even care, or is this their way of just trying to say, fuck you, PGA Tour, we're going to do this?
Well, I think you have to look at it from this vantage point, right? They've played one event. And the coverage, obviously, you got to wear foil on your ears to get the coverage. Let's be honest. Like, you got to log on to YouTube. You got to log on to YouTube. You got to turn a couple channels. You got to use the pliers and whatnot. It's like, I get that. It'll get better because they have the wherewithal, like they have the financial backing to make it better. And the players will get feedback, and there's going to be critics, right? They'll make it a better product. And I think they have the runway for 4 years. They've signed on their players. So technically they're on for 4 years. I don't know how they don't have the wherewithal for 4 years. I don't think they're going to just pull the rug out, especially from what I had heard is 2014 was supposed to be the year they had 14 tournaments. Now they're expediting that to make that sure it's in 2023. So they're already accommodating things probably ad lib as they're figuring this out on the fly of like, hey, this is getting some traction. viewership's up. I think there's going to be things as they continue to progress as an organization with the financial backing that they have. You know, they'll have an app, they'll have live streaming. There's going to be things that they'll make it more modern, and where you don't feel like you're logging on to an X-rated version of something you shouldn't be on.
The people that you are hearing, and you don't have to name them, I don't even care. I mean, we'll figure it out down the road. The people that are they gonna draw attention? I mean, yeah, I'm sure Jason Kokrak's going. Could care less. Harold Varner III, I'd be a little upset if he went. But is the next group of people, are we going to be sitting in front of the television watching this because of the group of names that they're bringing in? Or is this just going to be guys, 123 to 250 in the world rankings that, yeah, he's a good player, but, I don't know if I'm going to really tune in.
Yeah. Well, I think they're probably going to go for names, right? Like you're going to have a few of the names that I know have been floated around. I won't share those because for obvious reasons, but
please, Chad, please.
I think there's going to be more news coming down the pike here. It's going to get some heads turning, and you're going to have some more head tilting of like, wow, this is gaining steam. Like this is really starting to become its own entity. And now you're going to have a game of chess, right? It's going to be, hey, you've levied the sanctions down on the players. Now what? What happens when one of the players, to your point earlier, gets bumped out, but he tries to apply for a tour position at another tournament, even though he's suspended? He's going to appeal. And will that player be able to play through the appeal? It's going to be an interesting question. Again, a lot of this will go to courts. That's where it'll be decided. And we know how long that could drag on.
Oh, forever.
It really could. And that might be the case. But I just feel like sometimes in these situations, when you have disruptors and you have competition and you have the financial aspect they have, I think cooler heads will ultimately prevail for the good of golf. And I know there's going to be a lot of people still that are going to be bucking about where this money's coming from. That is a fair argument as well. I get it. I understand it. But that's not going to go away either. And I just feel like we're just going to have to kind of grab our popcorn and sit back and watch this all play out in real time. And I think we're going to know a lot more in 2 more weeks when they play Portland about who's jumping, who else is coming on board. I think you're going to see more players there. And then it's just going to continue. I really do. And it's going to get interesting. So
do you honestly think that both these tours can survive? And I mean, you said it earlier. And
yes,
you do.
I do. I think there's plenty of room for it. I really do. I mean, look how many tours are on now, like that we can watch. I mean, goodness, you can lay in bed till 4 a.m. and typically watch something. I think there's definitely room for it. And this is more of a worldly tour. So you're going to get different aspects in different parts of the world globally. It's just a little bit different. Not that the PGA Tour doesn't offer that and some of the HBC and all the stuff that they've done, but I think you're just going to get a little bit different vantage point. And I do think as a team competition picks up, it's probably going to have a little bit of appeal for some and not for others. So I think that's going to be stuff. Like there were little things that I noticed during the broadcast that kind of irked me a little bit. Like I couldn't see all the names, like the scorecard, the scoreboard was really busy. But there was a couple of points that were brought up to me that I didn't realize. It's like, some people that, well, it's like a member guest, it's a shotgun start. Well, one of the guys that I talked to was like, hey, you know what? It's good for all the players. Actually, we all start at the same time. We have the same condition. Nobody's getting a shitty wave of golf here. We're all playing the same conditions. So it's the same golf course for all of us. Never even thought of that. It's a great point. And it's a valid point. So, I mean, some of those things, like I look at that and there's a little merit there, but I mean, I just think it's going to have to be, it's something new. So we're still getting used to it, right? It's the bells and whistles on this tour. We'll see what they have in play. But from what I've understood with some of the players or a couple of them that I've spoken to, it's going to pick up steam and you're going to have more and more players that will join. There's no 2 ways about it.
Hey, Dahlby, go ahead.
so I heard that, and I may or may not be right, but I heard that one of the ASU kids might be playing in a few, and it's going to be more of like a what do you call it? The NCAA, where you can pay a kid to play now, and still he could come back and play as a college player. But what I was just thinking is, as Chad was talking about, perhaps this goes on. Maybe there's recruiting of different kinds of players. I remember, and think about this though. You remember when Hovland, Wolf, Morikawa, Justin Suh, we all knew about those four guys. If you're into golf, we knew about those four guys. They were going to turn pro after the NCAA tournament a few years ago. Well, can you suspend somebody before they're a member of the PGA Tour? Could a college kid play at Greyhawk, go play the LIV, and then the next year, go to the PGA Tour? I just think that could be a fascinating situation if you had a deal where you had four studs like that coming out. And I mean, you could even make a case, Troy Merritt's playing with one of the Pepperdine kids this week. He's playing with the Mao kid. I mean, he's kind of a world beater to be. It just is interesting when you think about that situation.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Chad. No,
No, go
what I was going to say is to Steve's point, they have what they call PGA Tour U now. And you see a Pearson Coody or Nicole Hammer this week that are playing on the Korn Ferry Tour. Coody played last week. This will be Cole Hammer's first event. The PGA, if this shit is really flying, and it is, PGA Tour U, instead of getting Korn Ferry Tour status coming out of college, needs to, and once again, in my opinion, give them tour status. That will keep, I hope, them away from what you're talking about, Dahlby, with Puig signing with the LIV, with all these other people that are signing with the LIV. If you stayed in college, you were the top five, instead of going to the Korn Ferry Tour, now you get tour status. I think that would save that, because it'd be hard, because chasing Korn Ferry Tour status in June and having to be able to get so many points in such a short, limited amount of time because of how the tour ends now is hard. And then what happens is that those kids have to now go to Korn Ferry Tour finals, not tour finals, but Korn Ferry Tour finals, to be able to get a Korn Ferry Tour card for next year. So let's say they play like shit at the Korn Ferry Tour finals and they finish 125th. The three of us know for a fact you're not getting in more than two events unless you Monday qualify. Okay. So now you're guaranteed an opportunity. Hey, Greg Norman over here and the LIV Tour are going to give me $10 million to go over and play on that tour, instead of having to chase this Korn Ferry dream to be able to get to the tour. So I could see that happening in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I could as well. And I think that's the true dilemma that PGA Tour is going to face. Like, where's the breeding ground going to come for the new players? There's unlimited phenomenal players here. Like, that's not going to be the problem. It's just, where are they going to embed themselves, and what tour are they going to have the alliance to initially? And that's where I go back to this. I keep going back to this a lot. I just feel like there will be some of this that will come to a head, as things always do, and we'll have a little bit more, I think everybody just needs to like calm down and like let this thing play out a little bit. Let's see who's going to play. Let's see who's going to qualify for the tour. Let's finish this season out, and then we're going to have a really good understanding of what's going to happen. Because next year you're going to see everything happening with the majors. And I still haven't heard anything differently about the majors saying no to these players. How do you say no to Dustin playing Augusta? How do you say no to Phil playing Augusta? Like, how does that happen? I have no idea how you could do that, but we'll see that. And I'm sure that'll play itself out. But if I'm a betting man, they're playing Augusta.
Dahlby, your thoughts on what he just said?
Well, and I think I think it will play out. I think Augusta's been very tight-lipped about things, and I think if it was going to be anyone to start out with, it might be the Masters that would do something like that, and they probably,
Agreed.
you know, it's a smaller field. They could make it more the, you know, the human rights story, I guess, if they wanted to. And then if they did something, then I think you might see the other ones follow. Obviously, this week at the U.S. Open, you know, there was they didn't want to talk about it during the you know, the longest day of golf on the Monday qualifying last week, and then they came out right away and said it wouldn't be fair to not invite them at this point. So I think there was, you know, that wasn't going to happen. But you could, you know, it could be a trickle down. But I think that also means that everybody's talking to lawyers and trying to figure out how this would work. You know, even, you know, the membership at Augusta makes their decisions, but they're going to make it based on sound legal advice, I would. So I don't know. I think it would be hard to turn those guys away, but I would think that if anybody's going to do it, it would be Augusta National. They'd be the first to do so.
I agree with you 100%. So back to you, Chad, real quick. So what Dustin Johnson did, and then RBC shit canned him, Rocket Mortgage shit canned DeChambeau. And it's true. I mean, they did.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Do you think going forward that the PGA Tour needs to look at situations like that? Because RBC, the Canadian Open, has been around for a long time. And I know they were pissed. I can tell you they're pissed that Dustin did what he did the week before. You know, he's the face of them, and he goes up there and he tells them, you know, I'm out. I'm going to take my money from. Do you think that the PGA Tour needs to realize, hold on, if we lose all these sponsors, if Rickie Fowler goes, okay, and I've heard Rickie Fowler, and you probably have too, and you're going to probably try to smile for a second here, or hide your face. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
If he goes, I mean, look at all the every golf tournament that we watch on CBS, NBC, Golf Channel, whatever, every minute and 35 seconds is a commercial with Rickie Fowler.
Yeah.
Do companies like this go, hold on, what the fuck's going on? We're out?
Well, I mean, that's what we're going to watch. We're going to watch this out in real time. And I think that there's a distinct possibility that could happen. And I think that you're seeing this bombardment from the sponsorships for obvious reasons, the initial affiliation with the Saudis. But I think, like, once the dust settles, I'm going back to this again. Once the dust settles, I think that there will be more congruency and more transparency within the tours of who's in bed with who, as far as like sponsorships, affiliations, where there's not this hypocritical mindset that everybody wants to jump to conclusions with. And it's like, it's the finger pointing thing. It's like, I think that we need to understand that there's a lot of affiliations within these tours and sponsorships that the average person doesn't know about. And that's what's going to maybe a little bit come to light. And that's probably what Phil knows too much about a little bit too, is I think that, I mean, RBC with Dustin. I mean, the RBC and the Saudis, I mean, I've heard affiliation there. I mean, so like, I don't know, like it's just interesting. I don't know if those are conversations behind closed doors of, I do think the players going into these that are getting signing bonuses, I do think that these are accounted for. I think they're speaking with their agents, knowing that their sponsorships are going to get pulled in advance. And hey, here's what I'm going to negotiate on my signing bonus. I think that is definitely, those conversations are being had. Hey, if I'm Dustin and I know I'm probably going to lose RBC and I'm getting paid X amount a year, or if I'm Rickie Fowler and I'm getting paid X amount a year, and those sponsorships fall by the wayside and I'm making 20 off the golf course, I'm going to put that in my contract. Like, hey, how am I going to make up for this lost money? Because this is inevitable that I'm going to lose it initially, until the sponsorships flock or start to accumulate on the LIV Tour. I think that's what you're probably seeing happening in real time right now.
Is LIV a golf? Is LIV a competition or an exhibition?
Well, I mean, right now it looks more like an exhibition. I think it's hard for people to really take it in a serious manner until they start to accumulate the players. And I think that's what they're probably fighting for as far as legitimacy. It's, you know, it's the guy with the fat checkbook rolling up and just signing checks to get players. And they're going to get their players. They're going to get them. It's just going to be a matter of who's going to stick and who's going to jump. And then that's where it's ultimately going to be decided. And after that kind of storm passes is when we're going to have more clear skies and some understanding of what's really transpiring between the tours and how can they move forward collectively. Is that a possibility, or is too much water? Can we dust this up? And has there been too much, word vomit thrown around? Like, that's what's happened right now, is you've had a lot of visceral attacks towards Norman, and rightfully so. I don't like the way Greg and Phil have handled it. I'll be honest, I don't like the way it was handled. But from a business standpoint, I understand it when you're looking at it from a player's vantage point too. I see it from that standpoint. I just don't like the way it was handled. I think could have been much different ways to go about it.
Is there a top 10 player coming over?
I don't know that. I wouldn't want to go on record and say yes, but I think there's a lot of players that are doing just what we're doing. They're
Speculating.
We're
Speculating.
They're watching and they're waiting for the next foot to drop and seeing what these sanctions going to hold. Are these sanctions going to hold water? That's what they're waiting on. And then there's going to be attorneys. Make no mistake about it. There's going to be some of the litigation involved. To Steve's point earlier, I think that's going to really come to fruition. I don't know when. I don't know who's going to do it first. But one player will do it. One player will try to sign up for a tour event, and that's when it'll start. And then the dominoes fall from there. Then you'll have a lot more clarity around what's happening.
I think, Bernie, the LIV Tour has got to be very excited. You talk about a top 10 player coming over. Taylor Gooch, that's a big find, because I think I don't think he's topped out at all. Bryson DeChambeau, if he is healthy, and that is to be found, we're not sure. I mean, he's kind of beat up. So if he gets his game back, that's a big addition to that tour. But I think in the meantime, yesterday on the PGA Tour was the commercial that the PGA Tour wants. They wanted like the finish at Canada, and they're not always going to get that finish. They're hoping for something like that this week and next week, where it's, the top PGA Tour guys battling, and it can't always be that way, but that allows the PGA Tour to also come out and say, we don't have to apologize for anything, as Jay Monahan said. And I think that's the stance right now. It's a firm stance, but as Chad says, will that change? Could that be massaged down the road? It's going to take a little bit of work. And I think first off is courtrooms, and then after courtrooms, there could be, stuff that happens. But yeah, I think there's probably going to be a few more good players that go over there. But you do seem to have McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, who are the heart and soul of the PGA Tour right now. And some of them are on that advisory board. They are very much pro PGA Tour. So, that was part of the comments yesterday.
Yeah.
What's the difference between resigning and not resigning?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure on that. I don't know. I really don't. I think it would have to have something to do, in my opinion, that would have something to do with the pension.
Okay.
Or leaving a door open, a trap door open, because I think there's going to be loopholes that these attorneys are going to search for and look for. That's what you typically have in the court of law, right? You're going to have these loopholes that the attorneys will kind of sniff out, and that's what's going to allow a player to play or allow the pension to continue, whatever it may be. I mean, that's my opinion. That's my own personal opinion. I think that that's probably the two crust there.
No, we talk about pension. The PGA Tour cannot ever take away any of the pension that these players that have left. They can't halt it. They can't stop it. They can't take it away. What they've earned is theirs.
Correct. Well, they can, yeah, that's money earned, right? Like I can't take away what you've earned as a player up until a point. Like I can stop my contributions. I can stop those. And that's what they've done. That's the spigot that they've turned off for the pension. But no, they can't like obviously disallow the pension or just destroy the pension. They can't do that. I mean, that's their money and that's their play. And I think it's 50. I think it's 55 when they get access to that. I think.
Okay, that was my question. So and the reason I
think
asked you that
55 they
question,
can draw on it, I believe.
Okay, so when you resign from the PGA Tour, you don't automatically just get a check sent to you, and that's your money. You have to wait till a certain period of time.
Correct. Yeah, and I believe it's 50. I think it's 55 that you can start to draw off of it, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, so don't hold me. That's
all right.
But I'm.
That's another discussion for another day as we see this develop. So Chad, can we have you? Can we have let's watch for a couple months and then have you back?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. Yeah, we're going to learn a lot. I think this has been great, guys. I appreciate you having me on and love what you guys are doing. I appreciate it. And thanks so much.
No, yeah, appreciate you being on. Last question before I let you go. Was Tiger offered more than $500 million?
Yes. Without question.
All right.
I mean, without question. I mean, what do you think Rory would be offered?
500 million. Minimum.
Okay. Then what's Tiger offer? Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. All right. Dahlby, have a good week in Boston. Good luck to Merritt. Chad, thanks for being on. This has been show 32. And I'll tell you what, it's one of the best shows we've ever done. And I can't wait to critique myself sometime tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Hit them straight, everybody.